I started off my life quite humbly. I did not graduate from high school, and I worked at laboring jobs for several years. And when I could no longer find a laboring job, like many of you, I got into sales. And I struggled in sales for a long time, and then I began asking the question, why is it that some people are more successful than others? Later, I studied and I found that very often a key question will hit you at a particularly vulnerable time in your life, and your whole life will go off in a different direction. And my life went off in a different direction from that question. I began to ask, why is it that some people are more successful than others? Why is it that some people accomplish vastly more? They make far more money, they are more successful in their careers, they have better relationships, great families, fabulous health, they live a long time, they go on cruise ships and beautiful restaurants, and the great majority of people, as Emerson said, live lives of quiet desperation. I think quiet desperation means that they feel that they could be doing far better than they are. And the worst of all is when we look around and we see people who are doing better than we are, and we compare ourselves with them, it makes us both angry and makes us frustrated. And here's the great discovery. I thought at the beginning that people who were more successful came from better families and had more money and went to top colleges and were more intelligent and had more creative and had better personalities and were more attractive. I thought all those things were the reasons why people were more successful. And then when I was about 28, I came across some research from Harvard that said none of them are true. There's people who came from terrible families who are billionaires, people who came from billionaire families who are impoverished and driving taxi cabs. There's people with high IQs who are struggling. There's people with average IQs who are running large businesses. And so there was no correlation. We found there's only one correlation for success, and it has to do with the way you think, is that if you think differently, your whole life transforms. And I wanted to tell you just a quick story. Anyway, years passed, and I began to learn these principles and to practice these principles, and my life gradually got better and better. And then I became a really intensive student of what I'm going to teach you today, tomorrow, and Sunday. And as I began to use these principles, it was like stepping on the accelerator of a car or pushing down on a dynamite detonator. Wham! Things changed so profoundly for me and for everybody who began to use these principles. Well, anyway, I got to the point where I had a goal, and we'll talk about this later. I had a goal. It was a fantasy. I was driving a used car, and I saw a guy who was younger than me who turned out to be not as smart as me, and there's nothing will make you madder than to see somebody who's dumber than you who's making more money than you, you know? And this guy was driving a brand new, beautiful 450 SEL silver gray Mercedes Benz. One of those big, beautiful luxury limousines. And I saw this guy driving this car, and I was so envious of the car. I said, that's the car I would love to have. I would love to have a car like that. And whenever I saw cars, by now, whenever you think of that, you trigger what is called your reticular cortex, which is a part of your brain that makes you alert to cars. So then you start to see Mercedes-Benzes everywhere. Everywhere you go, you start to see them. And time passed, I was working hard, I was doing something else, and I was calling on the general manager, his name was Mike Malone, I still remember, of a combined Mercedes-Volvo dealership, and we're talking about something else. He said, Brian, he said, I've got exactly the right car for you. And I said, no, not in a place like this. He said, oh, come here. He took me, he was on the second floor, he said, there's the car for you. It was a 450 SEL silver gray Mercedes-Benz with blue leather upholstery. It was my dream car. And of course, like most people, I said, no, I can't afford that. It costs too much. I said, well, don't be too sure. You have your own business, don't you? I said, yes. Well, under our laws, you can buy it through your business, and you can not only deduct depreciation, but you can also deduct 100% of the costs and the interest costs and all the fuel costs. So, and I said, but I couldn't afford the, he said, we'll take your car as a down payment, so you'll have no down payment. He said, let's work out what it would cost. It worked out, after everything, it would cost me $120 a month to drive that car. So I drove it home. And Barbara said, oh my God, what have you done? Anyway, so I'm driving this car. I'm very happy with this car. So even the boss for the company I worked at was a little bit coming, am I paying you so much you can drive a car like that? I mean, I had the biggest and best car in the whole company. And it was a large company. And so I was happy, and I would take it out, and we'd get on the highway, and I'd put on the gas, and it would be like a big land boat. And it would go, and it'd pick up speed, and it would just shoot down the highway 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, and so on. And so I was very happy with driving this car, and then I had to have a service, so I took it in to get it serviced. I went to pick it up. I still remember the mechanic's name was Mario, and he had been trained by Mercedes-Benz. He was an excellent mechanical engineer. And he said, I found a major problem with your carburetor. He said one of the previous service people had put in the valve, the acceleration valve, backwards. So instead of it spraying open, it was spraying down. I said, well, I've never noticed any difficulties. I mean, it runs fine. He said, well, I think you'll notice a difference. He said, but you've got to be very light on the pedal. I said, oh, okay. So I got in the car, and I was used to stepping on the gas, and the car started to, pick up speed and start moving, slowly. So I still remember, I got into the parking lot, I started up, I stepped on the gas, and the car went, like that, and shot across the lot and into the street where the traffic was. I had to slam on the brakes to stop the car from going straight into the oncoming traffic. And I had to back it up. I said, what on earth happened? He said, well, the valve was in backwards. And so from then on, here I was driving this car. I thought it was doing real well. I was quite happy with it. I was more than happy with it. But with one change of one valve, was able to turn that into almost like a racing car. I got 3 speeding tickets in the next 30 days. I mean, because I would just just touch that gas pedal and the car would go blam, like a car in a road race. And the lesson that I learned from that was very interesting. It was that within each of us, there's a control valve like that, sometimes several. Sometimes you have to go through, just like a mechanic can go through all of the valves. But what happens is if you can find that control valve and you can reverse it, change it, correct it, and the control valve is mental and emotional and psychological, you can suddenly explode in terms of your potential, what you can do and what you can accomplish and how you feel about yourself. All of these wonderful things can happen for you. And almost every one of us has a block there. This, again, I spent 4,000 hours studying this very subject of blocks. From Sigmund Freud, from 1895 all the way through to today, the very best psychologists say that within each person there's enormous potential. However, there are blocks that we have, and they're almost always psychological blocks. They're not blocks on the outside, they're blocks on the inside. So what we'll do today is we'll start talking about how you can release more of your potential than you ever dreamed possible. And I will give you the tools that work. I've given this program to more than 1 million people in 38 countries and 27 languages. On video, I've trained live presenters, and the feedback in every culture, every language, every nation is the same. I have 300 centers in China that give this program in Chinese because the Chinese are very, very aggressive about learning and growing and eating our lunch if they possibly can. So I'd like to show you and talk to you about some basic ideas. Here we go. Truth number 1 is that you're a thoroughly good person in every way. It's interesting how simple this is as a statement, but it's amazing how many people are really not convinced of that. They're not convinced that they're a thoroughly good person. We'll talk about the reasons for this. They question themselves, they question their goodness, they question their honesty, they question the depth of their character, but the fact is that you are a thoroughly good person. You're a completely good person, almost like a diamond in every way. And when you accept that as a truth, your whole life and your attitude toward life changes completely. The second thing we know is that you have more potential than you could use in 100 lifetimes. And this is a major subject, it was a major reason why we started this, is that whatever you're earning today, you could be earning 2, 3, 4, 5 times as much. Whatever you're achieving today, you could be achieving vastly more. And you could never use all of your potential. There are average people, when you look at people, and I work with them, I work with people who are millionaires and multimillionaires and centimillionaires, 100 millionaires and billionaires. And almost every one of them started with nothing, started unsure about themselves, started doubting themselves, started off with limited background, started off with no money, and achieved extraordinary things in their life because they realized that they could use more and more of their potential. Now here's our discovery. The more of your potential you use, the more becomes available to you. The more you use, the more becomes available to you. It's almost like as you're coming out of a valley, as you come up higher and higher in the valley expands and expands, and what you can do expands as well. The third is that you have the ability to be, do, and have more than ever before. So whatever you've accomplished in your life today, this was Maslow's great breakthrough, is it's only a shadow of what is truly possible for you in the months and years ahead. And if you've accomplished great things, people say, well, I'm doing pretty well. I said, well, if you're doing pretty well without these ideas, just think what you could be doing with them. I mean, if you're doing really well already, think what you could be doing if you could unleash more of that potential. Once upon a time, I had a gentleman come to my seminar, and he looked very nice. He was very well turned out, very well dressed, a very confident, positive, happy person. And as he went through the seminar, he got vast amounts out of the seminar. But I said, so where do you come from? What are you doing? And he told me a story, which I thought was quite remarkable. I never forgot it. He said, well, his grandfather came out, this was in Western Canada, it was in Alberta, came out to Alberta at the turn of the century and homesteaded. At that time, you get 160 acres, and you could homestead, and if you worked the land for 5 years, then you owned the farm. Well, it was what we call scrubland. It wasn't very good land. And he said his grandfather eked out a living, basically raising a certain amount of grain, a certain amount of grass, raising cattle, and so on. And then he passed the farm on to his son, who turned out to be this man's father. And his father struggled with the land for years through the wars and into the 50s and 60s. And he died, and he passed the land on to his son. So it was scrubland, and he could never make it work. So the only thing he could do was raise goats. And he was raising goats, and he was on welfare. And he was living in the same crummy old house that his grandfather had built and trying to raise 2 or 3 kids, and they never had any money, and they lived off goats and goat milk and welfare checks. And one day, an oil company came along and said, you know, we're doing some seismological tests in this area. Could we do some tests on your land to see if there's any oil down there? And he said, sure, do whatever you want. And because he said, I've got nothing going. So they put down a test well, and they found a pool of oil. And they immediately signed a royalty agreement, it's a standard royalty agreement that gave him, I think, $10 a barrel as a royalty. They began to pump 8,000 gallons or 8,000 barrels, whatever it was, 8,000 barrels a day, $10 a barrel, 8,000 barrels a day out of his land, and they reckon it would go on for at least 20, 25 years. He went from basically being a goat farmer on welfare to getting an income of, how much is that, $10 times 8,000? Yeah, about $80,000. I think it was $80,000 a month, I guess what it was. Please bear with me. It's an enormous amount of money. Now he's driving a Rolls Royce. He's living in a beautiful home in Calgary. He's got his kids in private schools. He flies around on private jets. He's making more than $1 million a year. He said, but the interesting thing about that is that the oil was always there. The oil was always there. The oil was there when my grandfather settled the land. The oil was there when my father had the land. The oil was there all my life. And he was probably in his mid-30s at this time. But I couldn't do anything with it till somebody came along and found it and showed me how to get it out of the ground. And it's the same with you or I. You and I have this great, enormous potential that has been there all this time. And I say you don't have to be somebody different than who you are. You just have to be everything that you are. You just have to get the potential out. And I am your oil company. I've come along and I've done the seismological tests, and I'm going to put down the test well, and I'm going to show you how to start getting enormous quantities out of that great reservoir that lies within you. Here's another truth about you. You can learn anything you need to learn to achieve any goal you can set for yourself. Now, my friend Les Brown says, to achieve something you've never achieved before, you must become someone you've never been before. And I say you have to learn something you've never learned before. But the wonderful thing is, the more you learn, the more you can learn, is that every person has enormous untapped reserves of intelligence. So you can learn any subject. You could learn how to be a doctor, a lawyer, a dentist, an architect, an engineer. You could learn how to do anything. The only thing that stands between us and great success is simply learning how to do things better and different. And the more you learn, the smarter you get. The smarter you get, the more you can learn. And we'll talk about this and how to do it. But the fact is that there's no obstacles standing between you and any goal that you can set for yourself. You just have to learn how to do it. And every single person who is successful today was once a failure. Everyone who's in the top 10% started where? In the bottom 10%. And then they set very clear goals, and they learned specific things, and they did things differently from the average person, and their life took off like that Mercedes-Benz touching on the gas pedal, blam, their lives changed. So sometimes the absence of one subject, one piece of knowledge, can hold you back for years. And I say never allow yourself to be held back because of the absence of a piece of knowledge or a skill, because all business skills are learnable. All money-making skills are learnable. All success skills are learnable. Everybody who knows them now at one time did not know them at all. And so you can learn anything you need to learn. Here's another one. Your life only gets better when you get better. It's amazing how many people want their lives to get better, but they don't want to change. They don't want to improve themselves. They want things on the outside to get better, but there's a direct one-to-one relationship, which you'll learn about in the next few minutes, between what's going on in the inside and what's going on in the outside. The rule is, and it is literally a spiritual law, is you cannot have anything more or different on the outside than you are on the inside. But the wonderful thing is that there's only one thing in the world that you can control, which is what? What's going on inside of you. And by controlling that, you can control your entire world, which you'll learn in a few minutes. Now, another truth is it doesn't matter where you're coming from. All that matters is where you're going. One of the most important things in life that I've learned is most people are held back because of regrets. And Barbara and I came across this article a few years ago, and it said, analyzing a psychiatrist, it was an interview with a psychiatrist who had worked with unhappy people for 25 years, very prominent social psychiatrist, worked with top people. He said the most common words he ever heard when someone came to him for counseling, which would take anywhere from 6 months to 6 years, he said, were the words, if only. If only my father, if only my mother, if only I had, if only I hadn't, if only they, if only this, if only that. He said the words if only preceded an entire lifetime of grief. So what we did is we made a decision, and we passed it on to you, is no more if onlys. No more if onlys in life. Never say the word again. As far as we're concerned, the past buried the past is gone. There's no more if onlys in your life. And when you leave all of your if onlys, all of your regrets from the past, suddenly your whole life starts to open up. So from now on, just remember, all that matters is where you're going. You cannot change the past. One of the great rules in life is never be upset about something you can't change, and you can't change a past event. So what we do is just let the past events go. Probably 90%, 95% of all unhappiness is caused by past events, which can't be changed anyway. Once you let your past events go. I had this discussion with a very smart woman. She was interpreting for me in Kiev, in the Ukraine. And she said, you mean you can just forget about things that happened in the past? Just let them go? I said, yes. She said she had never heard that before. She thought if you had had a bad past experience, you had to carry it with you, sort of like a wounded animal. You had to carry it with you and pet it and stroke it and keep it alive and talk about it and share it with your friends and think about it at night and so on. She said she never knew. You just get rid of it, just chuck it. And so she came back the next day and she was just beaming. She was so happy. She could not believe that it was possible to just let go of past events. One of the most important discoveries in all of human success. Well, the seventh is the only limit on what you can accomplish is the limit you place on yourself by your own thinking. This was such a breakthrough to me. I still, every time I look at that, I think, geez, that's interesting. Wow, the only limit on what you can accomplish is the limit you place on yourself by your own thinking. So if you change your thinking, everything changes for you. One of the exercises that we do, and it's not even in this program, but I'll just pass it on to you, is we say take your current income or your best year's income and add a zero to it as your goal. Your goal is your very best income in your life and put a zero on the end. Now the first time you think of that, your mind does a reject. It's like a reject, sort of like a body rejects a new organ. Well, your mind rejects it. It just kicks it out. And you say, well, I'll put it back in. It kicks it out. It just kicks it out. And it keeps kicking. It's impossible to go from what I've taken my whole life to earn what I'm earning today, and you're saying I should start thinking about earning 10 times as much. I say, so do this exercise. Just imagine that there's 1 in 1,000 probability or possibility that you could achieve an income goal of 10 times. Just 1 in 1,000. Is that true? Is that possible? Say yes. Yeah, there's at least one chance in 1,000 that's possible. Well, could there possibly be 2 chances? Yes. Maybe 3 chances. What could you do to increase the probabilities? And once you start to think like that, your thinking begins to change from, no, it's not possible for me, to I wonder how it would be possible. What would I have to do to earn that kind of money? And now your whole creative mind opens up, and you start to think and see possibilities that you never saw before. So let's say you don't make it to 10 times. Let's say you only make it to 8 times, or 5 times. What a tragedy. But the thing is, the starting point is to start changing your thinking about what's possible. Why are poor people poor? Because they think poorly. My friend Charlie Jones has a beautiful home. He's a very successful speaker and lives in Santa Barbara. And he grew up on a farm in Oklahoma, and his father drove out from the farm in a sort of an RV, drove out from the farm, drove out and visited him for a couple of weeks in Santa Monica, and then he was heading back. And he saw his father pounding away on something under the car, and he said, what's wrong? He said, well, my brakes are gone. My brakes are out, so I'm sort of pounding off the brake, the pipe which has the brake fluid in it, and I'll just be able to sort of pump it and until I get back to Oklahoma, and then I can get somebody to fix it for me inexpensively. He said, Dad, he said, that's crazy. You can't drive all the way back to Oklahoma with no brakes. He's going to use the emergency brake and everything else. He said, oh, let's get it fixed. He said, well, it costs a lot of money in a place like Santa Barbara. I said, but what are you talking about? I said, what if the brakes failed on a grade or on a winding road or something like that? He said, you could die. He said, why is it you're so cheap? He said, Charlie, he said, poor folks have poor ways, and it's really hard to get over them. Poor folks have poor ways. Always remember that. Poor folks have poor ways. They think poor. They think cheap. They think saving. They think spending as little as possible. They think how little money they have. But you find that successful people have successful thinking. They think very, very differently than poor people. And so remember that. Poor folks have poor ways, but rich folks have rich ways. It's because people who make a lot of money, my friend Jim Rohn said, he said, the most important part of becoming a millionaire is not the money, but it's the person you have to become a millionaire. You have to become a totally different person to go from zero to being worth more than $1 million. But the good news is that if you lost all of your money because of a crash in the economy or something else, you can make it all back again because now you're the kind of person who can make it. Once you become a millionaire in your thinking, then it's only a matter of time before you quickly restore that amount of money in your reality. So the starting point is to change our thinking, which we have said over and over again. Moving right along. Things to think about. I came across these last week. I thought you'd be interested. This is Dr. Seuss. Today you are you. This is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you. Isn't that cute? I thought that was great. Well, you don't like that? All right, the heck with you. Be yourself. Everybody else is already taken. Isn't that a great one? So it's really important that you realize that you have everything that you need within you right now to achieve everything you could possibly dream of in life. So let's talk about session 1, the psychology of achievement. We say each person has a success instinct. Now what does that mean is that every person has an innate drive toward the realization of their full potential. This is installed in you. You see children, they want to touch and taste and smell and feel and get into things. Adults are always wanting to improve themselves. Everybody is ambitious to a greater or lesser degree. The only thing that restricts what you have is your own thinking. What you think is not possible for you, you wish you could, you wish you would, and so on. But everybody has this drive toward success. There was a wonderful line that said, within each person is an inherent drive to the full realization of their potential. In fact, my friend, my mentor, Ernest Holmes, said that all negative emotions come from frustrated potential. At the root, your negative emotions, your negativity comes from feeling that you could do or be far more than you are. It's only something that is holding you back. And then we make the mistake of thinking that the something is ourselves, and as soon as you think of that, you move from active to passive. I think if you take the 80-20 rule in our society today, 20% of people are proactive, like yourselves. You take the time and the trouble to do things, and then about 80% are passive. They're wishing and hoping and waiting and kind of have given up, and they hope that something will come along. That's why they buy lottery tickets. Do you know that 68% of young people today, when you ask them what they want to be when they grow up, you know what the answer is? A celebrity. They want to be a sports celebrity, a musical celebrity. They want to dance with the stars. They want to sing with American Idol. They want to get into sports. They think that their future, 68% of their future, is to become a celebrity, which, as you know, is one chance in hundreds of thousands or millions. And that's their thought. That's why they're so obsessed with all of this Facebook and Twitter and all the Oprah. The front page newspaper, Oprah's last appearance. I don't know about you, but see, Oprah's on in the afternoon. Now, if you're watching Oprah, it means your life sucks. You don't have a life. So all the people watching Oprah are people who are at home in the afternoon, who got nothing going, you know, and it's front page. You know, the Oprah, God bless her, Oprah could come and go, and Oprah could be on the front page of every newspaper for 50 years and have zero effect on your life. And nothing to do with your life, and yet people are obsessed with Oprah, Twittering Oprah, Facebooking Oprah. I just go, geez, what's the matter with that? You could be spending time with the people you care about. Spend as much time with your kids as many people spend with Oprah, and you have a wonderful family. Anyway, so each person has a success instinct. There are 7 ingredients of success. When I started talking about success, people say, well, how do you define success? How do you define success? And you know, there's an old saying, before you do something, you have to do something else first. So before we start talking about becoming more successful, we have to talk about is what is success. So number one ingredient of success is peace of mind. Peace of mind occurs naturally in the absence of fear and negative emotions. If you look at all spiritual doctrines, all religion, all meditation, all philosophy, all great thought in all of history, it is to bring people to the point of thinking where they enjoy complete peace of mind. The rule is that if you set peace of mind as your highest goal, you'll probably never make another mistake. If you set peace of mind as your highest goal, everything else will fall into place. And if you achieve everything else in the world, but you do not achieve your own peace of mind, you will consider yourself a failure. You'll be unhappy, you'll be frustrated, you'll be irritated, you'll be angry, and so on. So peace of mind is the critical thing. And so you have to keep asking yourself, what are the things that occur that give me peace of mind? When do I enjoy the highest level of peace of mind? And when you have no fear and no negative emotions, your mind is like a vacuum. What flows in is complete peace. When you have solved all your problems, when everything is fine, you just feel completely at peace. And those are what are called the peak experiences of your life. Those are when you are the happiest of all. And this is not something that occurs accidentally. You walk along and you trip over some peace of mind and pick it up and put it in your pocket. You have to deliberately design your life so that you feel a great sense of peace. And of course, an extension of that is happiness. Aristotle said the ultimate aim of all human behavior is to be happy, just to achieve your own happiness. When I read Ayn Rand's material many years ago, she said the ultimate measure of how well you're doing as a human being is how genuinely happy you are. And if you can accomplish everything else in the world, but you're not a happy person and you don't enjoy inner peace, well, then to that degree you failed. And you read these stories of people who are extremely successful, make an enormous amount of money, they snort coke, they drink themselves into oblivion, they go on tours around the country, like Charlie Sheen, and then some of them go home and shoot themselves. And they've got all this money and all this fame and all this glory, but they have no sense of inner peace. So that's where we start. The second ingredient of success is health and energy. It means, with health and energy, it means that you have abundant health and just a non-stop flow of energy. The energy just flows. By the way, I've designed this workbook so that you're going to have to pay attention. Because if you don't pay attention, you're going to miss all the key points. And I've written it out so all you have to do is put in a word or two. But it's very important. So health and energy is important. It means you have a boundless amount of health. And the true measure of health is how much energy you have. You get up in the morning and you feel energetic, you feel happy. And when you're really happy and excited about your life, you tend to have a boundless flow of energy. And of course, today, it's possible for us to live longer and live better than has ever been possible in all of human history. And our job is to take advantage of that. No matter what they say about our health system, it's still the best health system in the world, bar none. Nobody ever goes from the United States to some other country for health care unless they want to go to Mexico and get some of those bogus cancer drugs, which promptly kill them. Nobody has ever been cured by one of those non-traditional, out-of-the-country, somewhere in Africa or Mexico cures. All the best health care is right here in the U.S. And so our job is to take advantage of it. Now the third is loving relationships. This is really the most important of all. If you have inner peace and you have good health, then your loving relationships are terribly important. 85% of the success you enjoy in life will be determined by how well you get along with other people. If you are having problems with other people, that will immediately interfere with your peace of mind and will very quickly interfere with your health. Most illnesses today are psychosomatic in origin. Psycho, the mind, makes soma, the body, ill. And why is it? It's because of anger and frustration and problems, almost always with people. About 85% of our problems come with hair on top and talk back. The fourth ingredient of success is, you measure a loving relationship by how much you laugh with the other person. How much you laugh. And this is really the critical measure of the health of a person. A person can't say, well, I don't laugh very much, but I'm really healthy. No, sir, you have a lot of problems. Because human beings are the only creatures in the world that laugh. Did you know that? Is they actually laugh, and they laugh spontaneously. And the laughter comes from inside. It comes from the soul. It comes from the heart. It comes from everything in the outer world being fine. And so the more you laugh, the healthier you are. Do you remember Norman Cousins, who became grievously, grievously ill as a result of inhaling terrible, terrible diesel fumes in a Moscow hotel? And he came back, and they said he was going to die. His whole body was just falling to pieces. And so he moved out of the hospital to a hotel room near the hospital so he could get treatment. And then he had his wife bring in a whole bunch of videos with comedies on them. Comedy skits, Groucho Marx, those brothers, pardon? Yeah, and what it is, he just started watching comedies and laughing. And he laughed his way back to health. And he wrote the book called Love, Medicine, and Miracles. He said the most amazing thing is the more you laugh, the healthier your body was, the stronger the immune system became. The illness that was cursed him to die went away. And he spent the rest of his life just talking and teaching people how important it is to be happy and healthy and optimistic and to laugh a lot. When you laugh a lot, it triggers all kinds of functions in your body, all of which are good. You come out of a funny movie or a laughter conversation with somebody and just feel happy all over. So laughter is how you can tell if a relationship is going well. Financial freedom is a real big issue today. Financial freedom means that you don't worry about money. Worries about money, by the way, are the #1 reason for marital breakdown. Worries, disagreements, arguments over money. So if you have problems with money, they affect your relationship. If you have problems with your relationship, they affect your health. If you have problems with your health, it affects your peace of mind. And money is a major issue. We've been living through the most affluent country in the most affluent time in all of human history for the last 50 years. We've grown up in a level of affluence that is unimaginable for 95% of the world. And we've come to believe that this is what we're entitled to. You grow up in America, you're entitled to a fat life. One of the things that is leading to major social disruptions is a lot of people are finding that it's not true anymore. Is today, if you want to be financially successful, you're going to have to work very hard. You're going to have to get up early and hit it hard and work all day and work into the evenings. You're going to have to work 6 days a week. There's no wealthy people who work 5 days a week. Zero, nada, nicht, rien de chose. None. There's no successful people who work 5 days a week. Because if you work 5 days a week, you actually only work about 4, and you start late, you leave early, and you waste time all day long. Successful people work long days and they work into the weekends. However, they're doing something they enjoy, and they're doing something they get tremendous satisfaction from because they're making progress, and as a result, it's really not work. You know the old rule, I found something I love to do and I never worked again the rest of my life? I worked 6-7 days a week, but I never worked a day. And you'll find that when you do that, which you will before we're finished, when you start to find what it is that you love to do and put your whole heart into it, you never work again, and you get paid more than you ever dreamed of, and you don't even care. You don't even count the money anymore because you're just getting so much satisfaction from using yourself at the very highest level. And so financial freedom, this is something people have to start thinking about. The worst thing you can do today is to be in debt. As you know, as they say, the debt comes and goes, but the interest payments stay forever. And it's the interest that kills you. It's the constant payment. Look at that. So one of our goals is to achieve financial freedom. And this isn't something that happens by accident. We don't say, well, geez, I got to show up, I'm financially free this morning. No, what we have to do is we have to set it down and make a plan, and we have to work on it for a long time. It's not something you can do once, it's something you need to do throughout your career. And too many people today are deeply in debt. You know, 70% of Americans live from paycheck to paycheck. 70% of Americans. What that means is that they have no money. They have no reserves. The average American family at the age of 40 for the major breadwinner has a total net worth of about $40,000. And that's including the equity in their home. At the age of 60, they have a net worth of about $62,000. An average of about $1,000 a year. Most people without pensions, that's why there's so much political controversy, without pensions, most people would be destitute. They'd be impoverished because they have nothing. 70% have nothing. Why? It's not because they haven't earned a lot of money. Do you know that if you saved $100 a month for your entire working lifetime, you'd be worth more than $1 million when you're retired? $100 a month. If somebody put a gun to your head, could you save $100 a month? Yes, if your whole future depended upon it, could you save $100 a month? Well, it does. And people don't even save that. They spend it and they buy stuff they don't need to impress people they don't like. Anyway, so number 5, worthy goals and ideals. And worthy goals and ideals are what really set you off. Worthy goals and ideals give you a sense of meaning and purpose. They make you wake up in the morning and you're excited. You can hardly get going. You know, there's a lot of people who love to sleep. They love to sleep because they've got no reason to get up. People who are doing something and achieving something that's important, they look upon sleep as an irritation. It's something you have to do so that you're fully refreshed, but you do it as quickly as possible so you can get back to doing the stuff that makes you happy, gives you peace of mind, fills your financial coffers, and so on. The sixth ingredient of success is self-knowledge and self-understanding. In the Delphic Oracle, in the temple of the Delphic Oracle in Delphi, which Barbara and I visited a couple of years ago, way out on the slopes of ancient Greece, on the slopes of Mount Halicarnassus, I believe it was, there's words, man, know thyself, the essence of all wisdom. And Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. Is the essence of all human wisdom is self-knowledge and self-understanding, is to understand who you are and why you think and feel the way you do. Because that foundation is called intrapersonal intelligence. It's been identified at Harvard as one of the foundation intelligences of great success in life. It's really understanding yourself, understanding your strengths and weaknesses. You'll find that superior people are very honest about themselves. They know that they're not good at certain things, and they're not defensive. And they're better at other things, and they're quite proud of it. And the last ingredient is personal fulfillment and self-actualization. What Abraham Maslow called the ultimate aim of human growth is to achieve self-actualization. Self-actualization is where you feel each day that you're becoming everything you're capable of becoming. You feel that you're continually growing and that your goals are greater and greater. You're becoming better and better. You're learning more and more. You're doing more and more. And you find that what Maslow found is about only 2% of the population actually reaches the high level of self-actualization, where they really feel that their life is just terrific. It's just expanding and it's wonderful and they've got so many things going on and they're happy most of the time and they're cheerful and so on. Get along wonderfully with others. Only 2%. He called self-actualization being, and the achievement of self-actualization the fulfillment of a being need, a being as a person. He said the 98% of the population are plagued by what he called deficiency needs. Is they're constantly compensating for their inner deficiencies and their worries and their doubts and their fears and their past experiences and so on. Only 2% reach self-actualization. Before we're finished, we'll all be at that 2%, where the deficiency needs just drop off like the first stage of a rocket out of Cape Canaveral and are gone, and then you just have the command module. So what I'd like you to do now is I'd like to take, and let me finish the last one. We say the key to success is, first of all, understanding. And understanding is, is understanding yourself and understanding your world. And that takes some time, it takes some study. And the second is effort, is you have to work. You have to be willing to make the efforts necessary. When I began to study Ouspensky and Gurdjieff many years ago, they called it the work. And there's always work that you have to do. If you want to become physically fit, if you want to lose weight, there's a lot of work that you have to do. And unfortunately, most people, the bottom 80% of people, are lazy. Actually, there are three types of lazy. They're lazy, very lazy, and bone lazy. And one of the greatest problems we have in our society today is lazy people who want the rewards that hardworking people get. And they call the lazy people the average person. They call successful people the millionaires and billionaires, the millionaires and billionaires, the millionaires and billionaires, without realizing that all of those people started with nothing. Many of them were poor, many of them were immigrants, and they worked 20 to 30 years to become financially successful, and they say, well, these people should just be made to share this wealth that just fell in their hands. I mean, like there was a politician who ran for the presidency some years ago, and he said, those who have been lucky at the gaming tables of life should be forced to share their winnings with those who have not been as fortunate. That's the mindset. In other words, if you're successful, just luck. So therefore, you don't really deserve it, so it should be taken from you and given to others. The fact is that it takes tremendous effort for you and I to achieve any kind of success. But wonderfully enough, you can shortcut the efforts, which we'll learn how to do today. So I want you to give yourself an exam here, and give yourself grades on in this exercise, page 5, and just give yourself a grade on a scale of 1 to 10 in each of these areas. And just be honest with yourself. This is not for you to share with anybody unless you want to share it. But question number 1, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you agree with, I am completely free from fear, stress, anxiety, want, and other negative emotions?